If you are a nonprofit founder, you might be wondering what your role is or should be after you've started the nonprofit and things are up and running. It's a common question and one that mystifies many founders. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the possible roles that founders can play in the nonprofits that they start or help start. Once again, I'm Amber Melanie Smith. I am a nonprofit founder myself and the executive director of the nonprofit that I started. I make these videos here on YouTube to help other folks who might be on some kind of social impact journey, whether that is starting a nonprofit or social enterprise or just trying to do some good volunteering or helpful service out there in the world. I really hope that you find this video helpful. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel for more videos on these topics. And if you need a little extra support or guidance, definitely check out my website, founder2fulltime.com, where I now have not one, but 2 online trainings up there. The first one's focused on starting a nonprofit and the process involved in that. And the second one is focused on fundraising and how to develop a fundraising strategy unique to your organization. Okay, let's get into today's topic. So one common misconception that I hear often is that the founder of the nonprofit is the owner of the nonprofit, when in fact the way nonprofits are structured, and I'm specifically here talking about how they are structured in the United States, nobody technically owns a nonprofit, not even the founder. And this is because the way nonprofits are structured in the United States, in order to get that tax-exempt status that makes donations to them tax-exempt and makes them not have to pay certain types of taxes, etc., they have to be set up as a non-commercial entity that has a public-serving mission. Nonprofits are not set up to generate profits for stakeholders like a company, nor can nonprofits be sold like a company could be. To help grasp this concept a little further, it's interesting to think of a comparison between nonprofits and government, for example. So nobody owns the US government. Instead, it is governed and led by people that we elect to do that for us. And in nonprofits, the organization is governed and led by elected board of directors members. They can have staff, but the board of directors is the entity that is voting on policy and strategy for the organization. So hopefully that has set up some context and groundwork for understanding the possible roles that a nonprofit founder could play. Since the founder is not the owner of the nonprofit, and in fact nobody is the owner of the nonprofit, what roles does that leave for a nonprofit founder to play in the organization that they helped start? I'm going to outline 3 possible directions that they can go in this video, so let's go. The first possible role that a nonprofit founder can play in the organization that they start is as a voting board member. Now, in most cases, the founder is a board of directors member when things are first getting started, when the paperwork to become an official nonprofit is being drawn up, etc. They're one of those founding board members. But after all of that, after the organization is established and things are up and running, perhaps years later, what role can the founder play then? Do they still want to play a board of directors role? If a founder stays on the board rather than taking on some different role for the organization, or I guess leaving the organization entirely if that's what they want to do, if they're still on the board, it might be common for them to serve on the board's executive committee and possibly serve as chairperson or president of the board. It's like the leader of the board. So what does this look like day to day? Like, what would a founder be doing in this role? So when nonprofits are first starting out, a founder might be involved in some of the following activities: recruiting and onboarding other new board members, conducting needs assessments in the community to validate the nonprofit's mission or concept, developing the nonprofit's first business plan alongside the other board members, coming up with a budget for the first couple of years, developing the first strategic goals for the organization, raising the initial funds to cover the costs of the nonprofit's launch, leading the effort to complete and file that official nonprofit paperwork they talked about. If they are the board chairperson or president, they might also be involved in developing the board's meeting agendas and leading the meetings. So then after the organization is up and running, if the founder is staying on as a board member, what are some of the typical activities that they would undertake as an ongoing board member? At this point, the founder is operating kind of like just a typical board member. They would do things like helping develop and set the ongoing or long-term strategy for the organization, developing strategic plans every couple of years perhaps, developing and refining the organization's annual budget every year, and as the organization grows, possibly if the organization determines it needs paid staff, would help oversee the process of hiring, interviewing, recruiting that first paid staff member who might be an executive director or other staff members, bringing them on and managing that hiring process and determining how much that person will be paid or those people will be paid. Okay, so the second possible role a founder of a nonprofit might play in the organization that they helped start is as a volunteer. In some cases, a founder just might not have any interest in the governing side of things or no interest in taking a very active role in the organization. Perhaps they're a serial entrepreneur and they just like the process of starting things up and then letting them go. There could be any number of reasons that a founder might choose to just play the role of a non-voting volunteer in this case. So as a non-voting volunteer, someone who still cares about the cause but doesn't want to lead the effort, here's what that might look like for them. As we sort of covered, a volunteer who is not serving on the board of directors, that means that they don't have a vote in the organization's policies, strategy, their budget, what direction they go in. Even if they have opinions, at that point they're not on the board and they no longer have a vote. They can help serve the cause in other ways, but voting on the board is not going to be one of them. So while this means that that volunteer founder no longer has the power or influence or voting ability that board members have, it also means they don't have the responsibility or liability. And for some folks, that's totally fine with them. Now, the third common role that founders of a nonprofit could play is as the executive director of the nonprofit that they started. Now, when I'm talking about an executive director position here, I'm typically talking about a paid leadership staff role with the organization. Oftentimes, this position does not have a vote on the board, whether they are founder or not, and they must avoid conflicts of interest. So they cannot, even if they do have a vote, they cannot influence or vote for anything that directly affects them. So a little bit more about what I mean by this, because this is a common question I get from folks, is that if a founder wants to become paid staff for the nonprofit that they started, whether that's executive director or some other paid staff role, the board of directors has to be the one to vote whether or not to hire them and what their salary should be. And the reason for that is that you have to avoid conflicts of interest when you have an established nonprofit. And a conflict of interest is when someone might be at risk of personally benefiting or having undue or unfair influence over the organization. So they have to recuse themselves from votes or situations in which they would have influence over a situation like that. So in this case, the founder cannot vote to hire themselves, nor can they vote what their salary would be. The board has to do that. And once the founder is hired by the board of directors to be the executive director in this case, the board of directors then becomes essentially who the founder reports to. As executive director, the founder might be responsible for several things. Mostly the executive director, it's in the title, executive execute, on the organization's mission day to day. This could mean leading the organization's programs, running its major projects, conducting outreach for the organization, basically bringing the organization's public serving mission to life through the day-to-day activities of the organization. The executive director also needs to provide updates and reports reports to the board of directors. That's on the organization's financial status, its progress towards achieving the goals of its programs and its charitable mission, and all of that good stuff. The executive director is also helping develop the strategic vision and strategic plan for the organization. So what will the organization's goals be in 1 year or 3 years or 5 years? And what is the action plan to get to reach those goals? The executive director also will help with developing the organization's annual budget, which the board of directors then votes on, and providing explanations for the recommendations the director has put in the budget suggestions that they've offered the board. The executive director also drives a lot of the organization's fundraising efforts, of course, with the board's help. And a lot more. The executive director position is a big role. They often wear many hats, especially in newer or smaller organizations. If you're interested in learning more what an executive director does, definitely check out my other video. It's called "What Does an Executive Director Do Exactly?" It outlines all of the major aspects of the role. I'd love to hear from you. Are you a nonprofit founder or aspiring nonprofit founder, or in some other type of leadership position at a nonprofit organization? And what role or roles are you playing, or do you hope to play in the nonprofit? Share in the comments below. I'd love to kind of see what variety of positions we have watching the channel. And as I mentioned before, if you need a little bit of extra help starting or growing or developing a fundraising plan for a nonprofit, check out my website, foundertofulltime.com. One last thing, I have this group on Facebook. It's called Change the World or Bust. We've got, I want to say, maybe 2,000? I don't know, it's a lot of people now from all over the world. It's super cool, all with the goal of changing the world or making an impact or improving their community in some way, whether it's through starting a nonprofit or some other project. And it's just a really cool group, so come on by, come check us out, and come have a conversation with us. Once again, I'm Amber Melanie Smith. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.